Oral questions by members.
Member for Richmond Bridgeport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Richmond residents are confused. They are worried. This letter from the city says, I quote, "The court has declared aboriginal title to your property, which may compromise the status and validity of your ownership." End quote. Richmond residents deserve an answer. Will this Premier defend their right to the home they own?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This province was the first out of the gate to say that we were appealing the decision, the Cowan decision. This is precisely because of what the member raised, which is we are going to defend the rights of property owners in that area. We are working with parties, including I've met with the mayor of the city of Richmond and some of their councillors. Our legal teams are working together and will continue to do so.
Member supplemental.
Again, people are afraid. They have heard nothing from member from Richmond Steveston, and they heard silence from this Premier Attorney General. Richmond residents deserve a solution. They deserve a government that will demand this court case is resolved at the Supreme Court of Canada. There's an information session on October 28th where Richmond residents are looking for answers. Our Richmond Conservative MLAs will be there. Will this Premier and the NDP MLA for Richmond Steveston, will they also attend the meeting?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was not being silent. In fact, I just answered the member's previous question. I'll continue. Not only was our government the one to step forward first to say that we're immediately appealing the decision, we are hard at work right now with our team of lawyers because we will defend the rights of property owners. We know that people's ability to buy, sell, and mortgage private property is key in our legal system and our rights of ownership in this province and across this country. We are hard at work, working not only with the City of Richmond and their council, with the federal government on grounds of appeal at the Court of Appeal level. Mr. Speaker, we know that upholding private property rights is very key and critical work, along with the work of reconciliation. This will always be our approach, to resolve outstanding questions of legal theory and attack them when we need to, and also sit down with First Nations to try to resolve issues and bring forward final resolution of some of the past wrongs. We are going to keep at that work, Mr. Speaker, and we won't give up.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the Premier stood and said that he's going to fight for private property rights, and I'm happy to hear that. Certainly that is our goal, is to protect private property rights. However, I did ask this question and I want to ask it again. When the Premier was Attorney General, instructions were given to the government lawyers to not argue extinguishment of Indigenous rights where they overlap with private property rights. In other words, to not argue to protect the rights of private property. So the question, quite frankly, to the Attorney General is simple. Since that is the direction that was given, how can this government stand and legitimately say that they are actually trying to protect private property rights?
Attorney General.
It's simply not true what the Leader of the Opposition has said. Without getting into very complicated legal arguments and the details of the 30 minutes that we have here, what we argued before the Supreme Court of BC was displacement and suspension of Aboriginal title, that a private property right sits above that title so we could protect the interests of private property owners. There was, before the court, many arguments. Arguments were based on the case law and what we thought was the best arguments to protect private landowners. As the member knows, opposite, the City of Richmond did argue extinguishment, and that also failed at the Supreme Court. We will continue at it, Mr. Speaker. I'll just note that in 2014, the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation, and that was when the Cowichan decision was first filed. We should be asking for his record on what he did with that at the time.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, this government has had 10 years to deal with it, and clearly they haven't done anything with that file, unfortunately, except let it go to court when it says clearly that its goal was to not have things go to court. But I want to ask this, Mr. Speaker. Private property rights are not protected by the Canadian Constitution. Indigenous rights, when it comes to title, are. Indigenous rights allow for exclusive and beneficial use, as does private property rights. It's clear the City of Richmond explained very clearly that this government, as well as the federal government, did not argue the extinguishment and protection of private property rights that they did. There was a very distinct and different course that was taken by these two governments. But given, Mr. Speaker, that our Constitution does not protect private property rights, we need change. So two things. Will this minister support a direct reference question to the Supreme Court of Canada so that we can get an answer immediately and not have this uncertainty lasting 5 to 10 years while we wind through the course? And will this Premier and this government support the call for changes to the Canadian Constitution to enshrine private property rights?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start by addressing the first question from the member of the opposition. The proposal that's put on the table to have a reference at the Supreme Court of Canada, just to be clear what that would do, it would not consider the actual facts of the case that's right now what we will put before the Court of Appeal. It's not clear that it would address the legal issues that arose out of the Supreme Court of BC decision that we see would be multiple grounds of appeal. And the Supreme Court would only issue an opinion which would not be strictly binding and would not immediately overturn the trial court's decision. So we disagree with the member's suggestion that would bring any level of certainty, and we'll continue on the path of challenging it with all the tools that we have. Thank you.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our license plates say beautiful British Columbia, not barren British Columbia. Our natural heritage and biodiversity is one of our main economic drivers, and it's why we attract over $20 billion in tourism spending annually. The Peace River watershed alone provides up to $8.6 billion in economic value every year, and the Lower Mainland's aquatic systems provide $30 to $60 billion annually. That, Mr. Speaker, is real wealth. Yet there seems to be a narrative in this House that protecting nature means stifling economic progress. The truth is the opposite, and if there's a single reason for the existence of this third party, it's to realize that paradigm shift. This government released the draft Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework in 2023, but since then, nothing. It isn't in the minister's mandate letter, nor in the 2025 service plan. Mr. Speaker, our caucus theme for this week is reliability and predictability, and it applies to the natural environment as much as it does to business and nonprofits, and particularly the forest industry. My question is for the Minister of Land, Water, Land and Resource Stewardship. When will this government finalize the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework and back up its promises with real legislation?
Minister of Water and Land.
Honourable Speaker, thank you, and thank you for the question from the Leader of the third party. We know that long-term ecosystem health and biodiversity are absolutely critical, not just to our province in terms of our economic prosperity, but also for the health of all British Columbians. And our draft Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework is a recommendation, as you know as well, from the Old Growth Strategic Review Report. And the idea is to create that paradigm shift that you're talking about. Part of that is our 30 by 30, our commitment to protect 30% of British Columbia's lands and waters by 2030, and we're well on our way to that. All of these efforts and many more are fundamental to protecting against the worst effects of climate change. We are excited to continue to move forward with our biodiversity and ecosystem health framework, and we welcome any discussions with the leader of the third party as well. Thank you.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad the minister brought up the 30 by 30 commitment to protect 30% of BC's lands and waters by 2030. Right now, only 15% of BC's land is permanently protected. To meet its own commitment, the province must nearly double that number in the next 5 years. This government may claim a higher figure, around 19%, by including what it calls other effective conservation measures. But conservation experts say those don't meet international standards for permanent protection. OECMs remain vulnerable to activities that directly harm biodiversity. In just 6 years, this government's pro-development predecessor protected way more of BC's land base than this government has in 8 years. So through you, Honourable Speaker, again to the Minister of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, how does this government portray itself as green while falling behind on its promise to protect 30% of BC's land and waters, and when will it finally deliver on this crucial commitment?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you once again. 30 by 30 is absolutely dear to my heart, and we are absolutely not falling behind. In fact, we hope to reach 30 by 30 by even earlier, and I think that's a commitment that we're all committed to on both sides of this House. We know how important it is to protect our lands and waters in British Columbia. At the end of the day, that is all we have if we're not able to have healthy, secure watersheds and water supply. We put all of our health at risk. And when we get out into the back doors and we enjoy the back country, we fall in love with it. And when we fall in love with something, we want to protect it. So this should be a nonpartisan issue. This should be something that we all work towards together, because it's incredibly important, not just for the health of British Columbians, but for the future of all of us. Thanks.
Leader of the fourth party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A judge has decided that homes in Richmond are now owned by the Cowichan tribes because their great-grandparents once fished there. That is Aboriginal title.
Member, please continue.
There are 200 more bands in BC with their own Aboriginal title claims. Judges have the legal authority to give away every square inch of this province, including your home, as long as Aboriginal title remains in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, property rights are the foundation of Western civilization. Aboriginal title is an existential threat to that civilization. My question is for the Premier. Will he support constitutional reform to legally extinguish Aboriginal title?
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, we take a different view than the member on many things, including this one. The work of reconciliation and sitting down with First Nations across this province to resolve historic wrong and to bring certainty to the land is the path forward, and it's a path that we will continue to take, and is an important one. And I've already talked quite extensively about our approach in this legal matter that we'll continue to take to uphold private property rights, and we will continue to work with First Nations to bring agreements and certainty to the land. Thank you.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's no secret that the Premier supports Aboriginal title. So does the leader of the so-called official opposition. They both support UNDRIP and its never-ending giveaways. Recently, we learned that in 2021, BC's Freedom of Information law was amended to block public disclosure of any documents related to Indigenous rights. Now, the Premier wants local governments to meet secretly with Aboriginal groups as well. Mr. Speaker, if the Premier is so proud of giving away public land, money and power, then why is he passing laws to keep it all being done in secret?
Shameful.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd remind the member when it comes to this House that asking questions around legislation that is on the floor of the House to be debated and questioned during the committee stage of the bill is inappropriate, and her questions, she can ask them during the appropriate stage when that legislation is being discussed in the House.
Member for Kamloops Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the unfortunate resignation of 7 OBGYNs, the whole department, in Kamloops should not have come as a shock to this government or to this minister, given that for the last several years they have been trying to get changes and agreements negotiated with this government, both around OBGYN services, the TRFO, and midwifery clinics in Kamloops. In fact, they thought they had a deal with this government just before the last election, and then, like every other election promise this government did, it disappeared after the election. A year later, the OBGYNs, facing a burnout and fear for patient safety, crafted a letter to Interior Health and the Minister of Health, letting them know that they needed to see the changes or they would have to consider resignation. That was on October 1st. 9 days later, 4:30 on a Friday of a long weekend, Interior Health notified the OBGYNs that there would be no further negotiations, that in fact their resignations would be accepted, and the government and Interior Health were done negotiating. How does the minister explain firing 7 OBGYNs instead of actually negotiating for patient safety and physician safety in Kamloops?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question and raising the very serious issue around providing maternity services to people in Kamloops and the region, which of course is absolutely critical, and people need to know that it is there for them. And so I want to start off my answer by assuring people that anybody who is going into labour or is experiencing serious risks in their pregnancy, they should always present at Royal Inland Hospital, and that the care will be there for people to continue to work with their primary care providers during this time. The OBGYNs have been negotiating with Interior Health, and that work continues. Interior Health has made it very clear that they are willing to sit down and talk with, and they are talking with and have been for months, as the member indicates, on this. Interior Health has also heard from at least a dozen other OBGYNs who are interested in prospective employment, and they are discussing that with them as well. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's just so important that we continue to take all the steps necessary to make sure that these services remain robust, and particularly at a time as we have canvassed often in this House, Mr. Speaker, around the shortage of specialists and the shortage of physicians that we're experiencing. That's why Interior Health will continue to take these steps. They will continue to recruit. They will continue to talk with the physicians. It is my expectation, and I have made it very clear, that I expect the physicians and Interior Health to sit down, negotiate together, and to continue to put the patient's interests first.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that answer simply doesn't hold up. The reality is they've been begging for 2 other OBGYNs to be recruited into Kamloops over the last couple of years, and they haven't been able to fill those spots. Yet now the minister wants us to believe they're going to magically find 7 to replace the 7 they just fired because they didn't want to keep negotiating. The 12 the minister mentions are not credentialed in Canada, would take years of shadowing before they would actually be up to steam, because they actually applied previously and were deemed to be not acceptable to fit into the OBGYN services within Kamloops already. There's a very simple way. The minister keeps saying they're negotiating. Interior Health has told the doctors the negotiations are over, done. The ministry and Interior Health are done with this. Will the minister table, present, unredacted, the email that Interior Health sent on October 10th, which was before the final letter of resignation from these doctors that everyone is talking about? Will she table and present to this House that document, that email, that 4:30 on the Friday of the long weekend that said negotiations were over, the ministry and Interior Health were done, and thank you very much for your services, OBGYNs, but we're done with you?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I just stated, it is my expectation that Interior Health will continue to work with the physicians and that they will continue to undertake the work on hiring more and finalizing a contract.
Member. Minister will continue.
And finalizing a contract that will significantly increase compensation to fill vacancies. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, Interior Health continues in recruiting and attracting locums to fill spots. I want to be very clear that physicians don't just submit a resignation letter and then walk out the door. that they have duties to uphold, and that includes a 90-day transition period. That is time for Interior Health to continue working on this file and to continue working with these OBGYNs. And it is my hope that perhaps some of them will change
Member.
their approach. But Mr. Speaker, the member talks about credentialing taking, well, I think he said years. Mr. Speaker, that's why this government has been working so hard to reduce credentialing and licensure, and that for physicians, particularly coming from places like the U.S., it is now measured in months, not years. In fact, we are working to get that down to weeks, Mr. Speaker, because we know that is one tool that we can use to continue to bring more physicians and more healthcare workers to this province to strengthen the healthcare system so that people have the healthcare that they need, when they need it, and where they need it. Thank you.
Member for Langley Willowbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fraser Health Authority is the biggest health authority in the province. A simple question to the Minister on Women's Health. How many gynecological oncologists are currently in the Fraser Health Authority? I'm not looking for long answers. I'm looking for a simple answer. What's the number?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question. Gyne-oncology services are something that's incredibly important for women, people who are experiencing cancers of a certain kind. And of course, attracting those physicians to BC and increasing the number has been part of the work that we have been doing in expanding these services.
Members, let the minister finish.
Mr. Speaker, we have made a commitment to establish gyne-oncology services in the Fraser Health Authority. We are working towards that. In the meantime, we have expanded these services in Kelowna, and that has significantly brought down the wait time for people in the Fraser Health area who are able to travel next door to Vancouver Coastal Health. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue this work, working towards establishing these services in Fraser Health. And Mr. Speaker, I'll wait for the second answer to continue. Thank you.
Member for North Island.
So I'm going to answer that question for the minister. So Fraser Health has 2.2 million people. It's the biggest health authority in British Columbia, and it has 0 gynecological cancer surgeons. And the Ministry of Health had promised 3 positions for Fraser Health. So thinking about that and thinking about what's happening in Kamloops, we're talking about resignation of 7 OBGYN. 7. And I'm not sure that the minister understands that obstetrical emergencies are emergencies. And Kamloops is a tertiary care center. People go to Kamloops for complex obstetrical care. So I've heard from an OBGYN surgeon who told me that women's health, quote, is a mess in BC. And this mess is brewing everywhere. Does the minister agree with this statement?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question, and I want to thank her too for her care and attention to women's health, because I share that passion with her. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about gynecological oncology and the services, and the member has talked about the services that are or are not available in Fraser Health, but I really want her to understand, and this House to understand, that as we expand these services and have done so in Kelowna, that we have brought down the wait times for women in Fraser Health area, that previously only 4 in 10 people were receiving their surgeries within the target times, and that now, because people can get that service in Kelowna, which is available to people from the north and from all areas of the interior, not having to travel down to the lower mainland, it means that now 9 out of 10 women are meeting those surgical timelines. This is a phenomenal increase in capacity and service for people. We're going to continue this work in expanding out in the Fraser Health Authority. And in the meantime, yes, women do travel across the border of the health authorities into Vancouver Coastal so that they can access these services. Fraser Health has expanded the pre- and post-operative capacity in Fraser Health, which minimizes the number of trips that people need to do into Vancouver Coastal Health. Mr. Speaker, this government is deeply committed to women's health. We have taken extraordinary steps in past year, including the introduction of free contraception, for example. We will continue to support reproductive health and the rights of women, not, Mr. Speaker, not as all members of this House will. And I have to emphasize, it is so deeply important that we continue to do this work, and I will not stop. Thank you.
Member for Kelowna Centre.
Lindsay Richault is a Kelowna mother who was given 6 months to live, and then she was waitlisted for 10. She has a transplant match, yet she's just become another waitlisted number left to die in the system. Why are women like Lindsay having to fight for their lives in a system that's supposed to protect them? When will this government realize that their incompetence and inaction is leading to the unnecessary deaths of women in this province?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for bringing up a particular case. I think the member understands that I cannot stand here and speak to individual cases, but I would welcome her, as many members of the opposition have done, to approach me directly, to come to my office about specific casework so that I can work with them to do everything I can to support their constituents. Regardless of the political party that anybody chose to work for or to run for, that is my commitment as the Minister of Health, to work with my staff to serve all members of this House in undertaking this kind of work. Mr. Speaker, we are, as I have said, a government deeply committed to women's health, a government that is working hard to fill the gaps that were left for us to strengthen our healthcare system, investing billions of dollars in new infrastructure, attracting 1,000 family doctors through the establishment of a new family physician payment model, working to reduce the time it takes to credential and license here in BC, attracting more physicians ever before so that we can ensure that people like the member speaks of do not fall through gaps. Mr. Speaker, because that is the last thing that anybody in this House wants to do. And I invite everybody to stand united with me and this government to do this work in recruiting physicians and healthcare workers so that we can deliver the healthcare to people that they need. Thank you.
Member for Skeena.
When it comes to women's health, this government's record is shameful. In Kitimat, more than 700 women were left waiting for gynecologic surgeries due to a lack of basic equipment. The Kitimat General Hospital Foundation, with donations from industry and small businesses, had to step up, fundraising for an ultrasound table, most of a CT scanner, a TOCO transducer, and a fluent fluid management system so that those surgeries could finally be done locally. They've done more for women's health in 3 years than this government has in 10. Does this minister believe communities should be forced to fundraise millions of dollars for basic women's health care?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question and for her work in supporting women's health as well. But I have to completely disagree with her characterization of our approach to supporting women and women's health. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we are providing free contraceptives. We are expanding the scope of practice of pharmacists to prescribe those contraceptives. Mr. Speaker, we've improved patient access to IUDs, to cervical anesthetic by increasing physician compensation in those areas, paying family physicians who also provide care at maternity clinics through the LFP program. Mr. Speaker, developing a service contract model for midwives to support them in the work that they do in their full scope of practice. And Mr. Speaker, upholding the rights of people who are pregnant to make decisions for their bodies for themselves. Starting next spring, we will, with support from the federal government, be providing free public coverage for hormone replacement therapy, Mr. Speaker. We have invested in vitro fertilization, helping families and women achieve the goals that they have in starting their own family, Mr. Speaker, I won't take anything from the other side that says we do not support women's health, because that is absolutely not true.
House Leader of the Official Opposition.
I hate to bring a different light to how we understand success when it comes to women's health in this province. In one of the most critical times of a woman's life, bringing a new child into the world, this government has thrust them into an uphill battle just to access care. When women do not feel safe, either walking in the streets or laying in a hospital bed, and they are surrounded by chaos, how can we accept the answers given by this government today that they care about women and women's health? We've heard story after story, and the suffering is only compounded by the ERs that are closed, by the pediatric wards that are shut down, and the OB/GYN teams that are driven out. This minister talks about crossing boundaries of health authorities, but we know that many people who want to receive care in a timely manner actually have to cross to the States and pay out of pocket. So my question is very simple. And in terms of commitments actually don't save lives. Doctors and nurses do. I just would like to ask the minister one simple question. How many women have to die before this government takes women's health seriously?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and I will proudly stand here and defend this government's record on supporting women, supporting reproductive rights, and doing everything that we can to help women and their families thrive. Mr. Speaker, the member talks about people crossing borders and crossing into the U.S. to pay out of pocket. Well, Mr. Speaker, I think often about what life would be like if they were on this side of the House, and I can tell you, people would be paying out of pocket because they would bring in two-tier...
Members, come to order.
Because they would be bringing in two-tier health care, enabling people with the money to get to the front of the line, whereas this government will stand for fair, equal access to universal health care every single day.
The bell ends the question period.